It's funny, sometimes I can see that thing go clear, but good evening. It is good to see everybody tonight. Glad that we can be here. And of course, as always, if you're joining us online, we thank you for being with us tonight. And anything that is said or done, we ask that you ask us, question us. We're never afraid to speak for the truth, because the truth is self-evident and the Bible will speak for itself. 589, To Christ Be True. We will sing the first and third verses of this song, and then we will be dismissed to our classes. 589, To Christ Be True. To Christ be loyal and be true, His banner be unfurled, and borne aloft till is secure the conquest of the world. To Christ the Lord be true, for He will go with you, and help you all your conflicts through. To Christ the Lord be true. To Christ be loyal and be true, in noble service prove your faith and your fidelity, the fervor of your love. To Christ the Lord be true, for He will go with you, and help you all your conflicts through. To Christ the Lord be true. You may go to your classes.
Everybody give me a second to get rid of this name. Sorry about that. It's funny, when you want them to last long, they don't last long at all. And when you're like thinking, okay, they're going to go away pretty quick, man, it's there forever. It's like, go. I guess maybe the heat of your mouth at the time or something, I don't know. But good to have everybody with us tonight. Tonight we're going to continue our study in the book of Samson, book of Judges. We're going to be in Judges 15, dealing with Samson and going through that. And I think I have enough for my class tonight. I was working on it Tuesday in the hospital. I was there waiting during my mom's surgery. Did about 20, 25 slides, and they didn't save somehow on my. So I got to go and redo them all. So they're nowhere to be found. I looked for them. And I was actually working on 2 different PowerPoints, and neither one of them were there, so I don't know what happened. But the hospital probably stole them because I was on their internet. But it's just good for us all to be together as we look to Samson here and continue with what we have here. As we know, we basically started into this area of 15 a little bit. We didn't really get too far into it, so we're going to go ahead and read again Ecclesiastes chapter 5. And as we look to that, we'll see, I'll explain after I read that. and like I did last week, and then we'll jump into Judges 15. So if someone go and read for us Ecclesiastes 5, verse 8, please.
If you see the oppression of the poor, and the violent perversion of justice and righteousness in the province, do not marvel at the matter. For high official watches over high official, and higher official are over them.
Thank you. So as we stated last week, when we looked at this for just a moment, we stated that basically there's always somebody over somebody. We know that even in our own society, and some may say, well, the president's the highest. Well, the president has to have to answer to the Senate and Congress in a sense, because he does have veto power and so on, but at the same time, things he might want to get approved, they have to actually vote on it, and so we always see that. And then of course, the president doesn't get there unless people vote him into office, and so there is that. But there is someone, of course, higher than anybody here on earth, that's God. And so that's what we look to. And the reason we state this is because we know that Samson is a judge. He's been chosen as a judge for God. And just because he's a judge means he has authority over certain things, but he also at the same time has to answer to God. And he didn't do a good job of that in the beginning. And so we see it happen. So now he's at the point dealing with what's going on with the Philistines, and that's really what God brought him into this point, was to basically get the Jews away from the Philistines, get the Philistines away from the Jews, we're going to phrase it that way, and because they were persecuting them, it was really bad, it was a really difficult time, and so God wanted that the people to pray for God and to help them, so this is what God was doing. It's not going to last long for the people because they're going to go back to their ways pretty quickly, the Israelites. So as we look at this, we understand that there are many terrible things, like as we see happen with the Israelites, have been basically done to people over the years of our world, everywhere. We've seen this happen from the beginning of time, going forth, and just things change, and people wanting to take control over others. That's kind of the way it's been. And Samson, when we get to him in all honor and integrity, youthful anticipation, we stated that he found a woman that he loved, sought to make her his wife. By deception and oppression, she was taken from him and given to another. We spoke about that last week. And as we look at this, we know how many such terrible stories fill the pages of history and things like that. And so it's nothing new to us to read something about this. Yet we also do know that God revealed his own displeasure through his judge, Samson. And this time the act basically of treachery was done to a man who could do something about it. There's the difference. Remember, the Philistines thought, they could do whatever they wanted to, run things however they wanted to. This time it's going to be different. It's going to be different because Samson was a man that could actually do something. He didn't have to sit back. He wasn't, wasn't weak. In fact, we know that God gave him much strength, and strength that he could do many different things. And we talked about this with the lion. In fact, the lion, we know he tore this lion, this young lion, just tore to half. And so it's really remarkable to think that. We also know that during this time right now, as we're going to read here in Judges 15, it's the harvest time. So we realize that it's the time of year, kind of what we're dealing with here, moving into, getting close to April. It'll be April and May is what we find during the time of Samson. And we know that it's basically sets the stage for how Samson decides to judge the Philistines, how he decides to take care of things because of what they've done and what was done to him with his wife. So we'll get into that. We'll jump into Judges 15. If everyone look at there, we see we'll go to, so Samson's going to defeat these Philistines without a doubt. And so someone go and read for us, please. Judges chapter 15, verses 1 and 2. And of course, if anybody has a comment or question, just put your hand up. I don't see it, yell at me, and we'll get an answer. So we'll go through it. So Judges 15, and let me see here. Where are we at? Judges 15. Oh, I'm already there. So someone go ahead and read that for us, please.
After a while, in the time of wheat harvest, it happened that Samson visited his wife with a young goat, and he said, "Let me go in to my wife into her room." But her father would not permit him to go in. Her father said, "I really thought that you thoroughly hated her. Therefore, if I gave her to your companion, is not her younger sister better than she? Please take her instead."
So here's the father-in-law begging, Samson basically to do this. And I'm sure people have heard of the strength of Samson already. They realize these things about him. I mean, he probably looks like a massive, the pictures we see, we think of the big old guy. And with the strength he has, I think it's kind of funny the Bible talks about him being in a sense of looking not like huge, but basically one that was impressive of his looks. And so we can kind of anticipate that, figure that, and of course because of how strong he was. But even if he wasn't big, I mean, I just want us to realize this. You know, David wasn't big, and when he was a younger, child, or say younger, a teenager, and so on. And David didn't have a problem killing what? Didn't have a problem killing a bear and what else?
Lion.
And a lion. And now he did it with a sling, but still he did it. And if God gives you power to have strength and everything with it, you just do it. I mean, God gave him to do that. So here we have Samson with this. Samson's temper, at this point had already cooled down a little bit. He was angry, upset about it, and he brought a young goat as a gift. We see an act of reconciliation. He then sought to go to his wife, because remember, he was mad because his wife basically told the men of their wedding, what his answer to his riddle was. And so she really, and he knew she did it, because who all did he tell about his answer to the riddle? Nobody but her. I mean, she was it. And, she begged him, and he finally did that. So he went away, we know, and killed people to get their coats, to get these clothing for these men that he had promised, that they basically bet in a sense. And he was upset. So now he's come back, he's feeling a little better. And you think he's going to be mad in just a moment? You think he's going to be mad again with what he finds out right here we just said about his father-in-law? Without a doubt, we know that. So one can only imagine, as we see the attitude of the father at this point, he has done a terrible thing and must now reveal it to Samson. And I'm sure he was pretty scared to do it. He thought Samson was gone. He didn't think Samson was coming back, in a sense, at least is what he says. So he sought to soften the blow by giving him her younger sister. And that's not going to work. I mean, that's not what Samson is at this point with this. So under these circumstances, normally there would have been nothing else to be done, but these are not normal circumstances during this moment. We see with this judge, Samson, and with God and with the Philistines what's going on. So God intended to use Samson, as we said, to judge this nation. And this is what he's going to do to change, when we say that, not judge them, but change the tyranny that is found in the Philistines and the oppression, and move forward with it. We know that because of Judges 13:1, where we read earlier about God choosing him for this whole point. So things are going to escalate rapidly. I mean, it's just going to go crazy really quick. And we see here, beginning in verses 3 through 5, if someone go ahead and read these verses for us, what happens with Samson. This is the well-known story I thought about doing a slide with a picture, but no, I don't want to do that. And with the foxes tying their tails together and lighting fire. And it's two things with this. Number one, I would say it's really cruel, of course, for him to do that, but at the same time, it's very ingenious for the reason why he did that. To go through, some say, well, maybe most of the foxes got away. Okay, whatever. But once they got to that point, no, their tails are tied together. It's not just the fur. And so we see what's going to happen, but it is a pretty bad moment. Some say the Bible says foxes. Some also say it could have been jackals. So go back for jackals would have been more of a thing because they were a problem. They were a problem in society at that point, killing livestock, killing people. But foxes did the same thing. Remember, foxes would kill livestock and so on, just not the big ones. And so we get to this point. So someone go ahead and read this for us, and then we'll see if we have any comments or questions, please. Judges 15, 3 through 5.
And Samson said to them, "This time I shall be blameless regarding the Philistines, if I harm them." Then Samson went and caught 300 foxes, and he took torches, turned the foxes tail to tail, and put a torch between each pair of tails. Then when he had set the torches on fire, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines and burn up both the shocks and the standing grain, as well as the vineyards and olive groves.
I mean, these foxes took it all out. I mean, anything that would be to sustain you through the year, anything to not just eat, but also drink. And the olive oil was used for everything, remember back then. And so we see this. So, I mean, imagine the thought of catching 300 anything, animals. Imagine just trying to, anybody here imagine trying to go out and catch one fox? Just try to go out and catch one fox. You know, I've trapped a fox, but imagine going out and trying to catch a fox. And it's totally different. And most people, as we see that. So here he goes out and does this. So everything's going to get crazy at this point. We know that their fear of the fire, which was constantly following them, would cause them to run very quickly through the standing grain, so that multitudes of fires would be breaking out all at once over the area. You know, if you have a field catch on fire, you know, you could try to put it out and with that. But here you have these foxes, 300 foxes. Do you think they're all going to follow each other? As we just stated? No, they're going all different directions. I mean, everywhere they can. That's why we see about not just the fields, but also the vineyard, as we read there, and the olive groves. I mean, they're just taking it, going through everywhere with it. And so when this happens, as we understand, before it's finished, all the harvest of the wheat, it's gone. It's completely gone. And like the olive orchards were all burned and therefore destroyed. Very important to understand this. Olive trees, if an olive tree burns, and it, not just the olives, but the actual olive tree burns. Does anybody know what happens to that olive tree?
Oh, it dies.
It dies. It sure does. It's very difficult to bring one back because of the liquid that's involved. It's kind of like a you would say a pine tree. I don't know if anybody's ever seen a pine tree on fire. I've never seen an olive tree on fire, I don't think. And we had a bunch of them in California when we lived there. But a pine tree, when it catches on fire, being with the fire department for years, being in California with the fires there that we had in the mountains, the way we go, is that I've seen actual pine trees explode. I mean, explode like a piece of dynamite. And it's because there's so much pitch that is in it. Olive tree, you're going to have the same problem. You're going to have things, it's just remarkable of what's going to happen, how fast it catches fire, and what takes place with it. So as this is being destroyed, they would basically bring, you know, nearly a complete loss to the community. And a lot of times when that happens, you just have to completely start over. A lot of people, what they might do because of such a fire, may end up doing what back in those days? Maybe move somewhere else, you know, move on to something different. And the Philistines, as we see this happening. So it brings us down to Judges 15, 6 through 8. It's going to tell us that this was not only their food, but this was their livelihood. They didn't only use this to eat, they used it to do what? What do you think they also used this for? I mean, think about today, the currency and so on. Back then, they did a lot of what probably?
Trading.
A lot of trading. A lot of trading for different items and things they would have. They have nothing now. So they don't only lose their food to eat, their things to drink, their olive oil to be used, but now they also, and to eat even the olive groves, I mean, you can even eat those, we know. All of this being done, now they don't have any currency in a sense to trade or to sell these things and make currency off of that, as we would see. So this is a huge blow to the Philistines. And God was going to use that to his advantage because it would cause a beginning of falling apart, basically, of the Philistines to make it easier with the Jews. So let's go ahead and look at Judges 15, 6 through 8. If someone go ahead and read that for us, please. Judges 15, 6 through 8.
Then the Philistines said, "Who has done this?" And they answered, "Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he has taken his wife and given her to his companion." So the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire.
Now we talked about this I mentioned it earlier, last week, right before. I mean, we didn't go into this, but, so, there we go. So the Philistines are coming after their own people, right? And their own people, they said, who did this? Samson did it, but it wasn't Samson who started it. So that's why they're going to go and take care of this. Once again, we said this, the Philistines were such a awful people, they didn't care who they killed. I mean, just as long as they were getting what they want. So it was clear that this was a man-made disaster, basically what comes about. Wasn't an accident, you know, because not a lot of fires. Some fires start by accident, maybe by lightning or so on. But the majority of fires are usually man-made, is what we see, even the big fires that take place throughout our country. So when all this is happening to rebuild, they burned down, as we stated. I think it's kind of ironic. The fire they used, they go down, they burn down the father's house, and kill the father and the daughter, killing them. And the reason that's for is usually burning basically erases everything. It erases your history. Back in those days, you imagine, you know, you lose a house in a fire with all your belongings, you lose quite a bit. I mean, of your whole life. And could be in there, and pictures and so on, and we see that. So with this taking place, these people have no bounds whatsoever in their brutality and their techniques and the way that they would do this. And the reason I'm saying this, and I believe the reason God shows us this, is because if they were willing to do that to their own people, how much more were they willing to do to the Jews? I mean, it's just, whatever it takes to get what they want. So now Samson felt completely justified. He feels justified about it, and escalated the conflict to an even higher level, because now they didn't only, they didn't give his bride away, his father, but now the Philistines have done what? What have they done to Samson? They just killed his woo, his wife. Even though she was getting away, she's still his wife. And they killed his wife. And so now Samson's like, here it goes. One avenging after another, right? So he's like, now I'm going to avenge my wife. And go through all this. So the expression, attack them hip and thigh seems to be the idiom of the day when we look at Samson and what they were doing and the way things were taking place. We know basically the way that we would find is they beat the fire out of everything of what was going on, and leave them basically half to death. Their family is what it's really talking about here. So to really get where we're going, let's go ahead and jump into verses 9 through 11 as we see the fullness of what's taking place here, this great slaughter that will come about. So let's go ahead and read. I didn't finish this, did I? So did I read 6 through 8? Everybody? Anybody? No, I didn't finish it. Someone go ahead and finish 7 through 8 for me, please. Sorry about that.
Samson said to them, since you would do a thing like this, I will surely take revenge on you, and after that I will cease. So he attacked them hip and thigh with a great slaughter. Then he went down and dwelt in the cleft of the rock of Elam.
Everyone's probably like, what's he mean, hip and thigh? It's right there in the verses, I'm sorry. But so that meant, as we say there, that they beat them half to death is really what that gets of our language today that we say. So the news of this is it's going to spread and it's going to escalate, as we say. There's going to be a great escalation with it, which brings us to these next verses 9 through 11. If someone would read that for us, please.
Now the Philistines went up, encamped in Judah, and deployed themselves against Leah. And the men of Judah said, why have you come up against us? So they answered, we have come up to arrest Samson, to do to him as he has done to us. Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock of Edom, and said to Samson, do you not know that the Philistines rule over us? What is this you have done to us? And he said to them, as they did to me, so I have done to them.
Thank you. So it's, this is where you have to look at the Jews. Remember, they have asked for help from God. They've already got some help. We know there were other judges before Samson. And here's Samson, and they're like, hey, they rule over us. No, nobody else does. And they need to be reminded, who rules over them? God, and nobody else. And and we know this is the huge problem that we have with the Israelites, because they're going to ask for a king. They're going to want a king, and they're going to want to be just like all the other people. But which is interesting. Why would you want that when you see here's basically a whole civilization of people, and they're going to basically lose their lives because God's in control. And so we see this happening. So God doesn't reveal exactly how large the force these Philistines gathered. We don't know. It's probably a pretty good amount. And so we see this happening to deal with Samson. But it was a force large enough that, think about it. Here's the answer. Go back to this. That Judah brought how many down? Was it the next verse? 3,000. I mean, so it had to be a pretty good force we see of the Philistines to come to get him. The men in Judah did not see Samson as a deliverer. That's the whole problem here. That's the whole issue. They saw him as a problem child. And because remember, he had been a problem. He had caused problems. And he'd been doing that. So that's how they looked at him. They didn't look at him as one that would actually deliver the people. That's why the Israelites had such a hard time realizing to look to God at this point and still let the Philistines rule over them. Go ahead.
It goes back to what I think I said this last week, is the idea of when you sin, when you do something wrong, it can affect thousands.
Yeah.
Not just yourself, not maybe one or two others, but it can go into the hundreds, into the thousands. And that's what we see here, this back and forth retaliation, this anger. You know, Paul said, be angry and sin not.
Right.
You know, there's other ways Samson could have dealt with this whole situation and still come out as God would want him to.
That's exactly right. And that's a good point to bring up, what you said there, because, you know, when we look at this and think about God using Samson in this sense as a judge to deliver the people, remember, righteous anger is okay. I mean, we can't be angry. Just as long as what Paul said, don't sin when you're doing it. And that doesn't mean that we say, oh, great, Ernie just said that we can be angry with our spouses, each other, right? That's not what I said. And we understand that there's anger to be had, and usually that anger, righteous anger, would be that we're angry at sin, just like God would be. What we see going on with that. Ronnie, go ahead.
Got a question. Where was Edom?
Edom is, let me try to remember now my map. Should have put a map up there. Go down to Jerusalem, you go up, let me look real quick here. I think it's up about a couple hundred miles. Or, let me see, where's it down? No, it'd be down here in Judah.
Didn't mean to take up your time.
No, you're okay.
I haven't looked at the map lately.
So, that's Abaddon I'm thinking of. I can't recall off the top of my head. Well, I know Judah, of course, is south, you know, the Dead Sea. It goes from the top of the Dead Sea, goes down. And anybody else got an answer? I don't see it.
In my encyclopedic index here, it says Edom was a village of Simeon and a rock where Samson took refuge in a town in Judah, so it doesn't actually say where it is.
Yeah, I just want to like that. It's a region. Edom's a region, so it's very south. If you have a map, you'll see it probably down below the Dead Sea, south of Judah is where it would be at. So that's what it's a region area. So it takes in a bunch of different, that's why I couldn't remember what it was, a bunch of different cities and towns that were in that area. So I'll be sure to put up a map the next class and show that. In fact, I bet, now they just said that, I bet mine has Edom. Yes, so it's when you go south of the Dead Sea, it's right below Moab, the region of Moab.
Oh, yeah.
And so it'd be down there, and so you're talking, basically it doesn't align like to the left or the right or the Jordan like most do. It takes both. It takes the east side and the west side. West side, east side, like that. So that's where it's at, yeah.
Below the Dead Sea.
So, what's that?
Below the Dead Sea.
Yeah, below the Dead Sea. That's where we're located at.
Is it the same as Edom?
Are you talking about Edom or are you talking about Edom? Are you talking about this one up behind me?
That one, Edom.
Oh, I heard Edom. I'm sorry. I don't know where Edom is. No, I'm kidding. So as we know, it would be near, because it would be in Judah, and so we understand because that's where they came to, the people of Judah, and it would be a small cleft. It's a rocky area is where Edom's at, and Edom. I'm going to rephrase that again, not Edom. So I can look that. I may have Edom there.
Okay.
I don't have Edom on my map.
A place in the lowland of Judah.
Okay.
And transferred to the territory of Simeon.
There we go. So it's the low area of Judah?
Yeah, it says
Okay.
a place in the lowland of Judah.
Jackson,
Time Samson dwelt in the rock here.
okay. So it's actually near Edom, actually. It's at the bottom of Judah. So you have Judah and you have Edom like this, it goes below. So Edom, like I said, basically what it is, it's a big cliff area, mountainy range is what would be right in there.
First Chronicles 4:32.
First Chronicles, what is it?
4:32.
4:32. First Chronicles 4:32. All right, appreciate the question. Sorry I didn't have the answer off the top of my head, but that was a good question. I should have had that. So that's what we see this happening, and all this taking place. So the main thing to understand here with Judah here is that Samson, they're upset with him, of course, and they want to realize, basically, why have you done this? And like I said, they don't look at Samson as a deliverer. They still look at him as a problem, and which actually Samson's going to have a lot more problems before he becomes a man of God again, the way that he should be. And so they find Samson, we stated, they complain to him, and after getting assurance that the Israelites themselves would not harm him, Samson allows them to do what? Anybody remember this? What happens next? What does he allow them to do? They're thinking, oh, we're safe if we'll allow them to do this to me. Want to bring his heart back? To bind him. To bind him. To bind him with new ropes. Very important. It wasn't just old ropes, but it was actually new ropes. So they're thinking these new ropes are going to do what, Samson? They're going to hold him in place. Would anything else? I mean, so would even a horse or whatever it may be. So we get to these next verses here, Judges 15, 12 through 13. And so we'll go ahead and read them, and this is where we have this at. Judges 15, 12 through 13, please.
But they said to him, we have come down to arrest you, that we may deliver you into the hands of the Philistines. Then Samson said to them, swear to me that you will not kill me yourselves.
Okay, so this is very important because, you know, Samson's delivered. Imagine if Judah, the Israelites, ended up killing Samson. God would not be happy. I'll tell you this right now. Number one, they wouldn't be able to do it. It's just not going to happen. So it brings us to verse 13. Go ahead and keep reading that, Brother Greg, please.
So they spoke to him, saying, no, but we will tie you securely and deliver you into the hands, but we will surely not kill you. And they bound him with two new ropes and brought him up from the rock.
Thank you. So all this seems, you know, that be placed in the text to show conclusively that it was not the weakness of the ropes with what's about to happen. I want us to understand that. These ropes that they were talking about they would use would be a pretty good sized rope, and they're new. And how hard do you think it would be to break new ropes? Very difficult. If you have older ropes, you know, well, even older ropes are hard to break, but you know, unless they're brittle or something, you know, you bust them. So here we see that God basically bringing this about to once again show the strength that is found in Samson that would lead to what happened when he was turned over to the Philistines, and it's going to be a bad day for them when all this happens next. So let's go ahead and continue here. Oh, I don't have any more slides. Told you, all my slides are gone. Everyone turn to Judges 15, 14 through 17. So grab out your Bibles. We're going to do this. Judges, unless you already have them out, that's great. Judges 15. Like I said, I lost, I think, 25 slides. So Judges 15, 14 through 17. I guess that'll teach me not to look at it right before class. Judges 15, 14 through 17. If someone go ahead and read those for us, please.
And when he came unto Lehi, the Philistines shouted against him, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and the cords that were upon his arms became as flax that was burnt with fire, and his hands tossed from off his head. And he found a new jawbone of an ass, and put forth his hand, and took it, and slew 1,000 men therewith. And Samson said, with the jawbone, having trouble with asses, I'm sorry, with the jawbone of the ass, heaps upon heaps, with the jaw of an ass I have slain 1,000 men. And it came to pass when he had made an end of speaking, that he cast away the jawbone out of his hand, and called the place Ramoth-Lehi.
There you go, Ramoth-Lehi. And which literally basically means jawbone is renaming the area where they're at. And so we see here is interesting is, so he gets once again really mad. We see this happening in these verses. The Philistines can't hold, you know, their excitement at capturing this enemy that we see here. And, you know, they're all excited about it, and their plans were to basically do what, Samson? What do you think?
Torture and killing.
Torture and kill. And that was their MO. You know, they were torturers first, and then they would kill you. And so we look at this and we see this happening. Of course, we would never know exactly, but we're pretty sure that's what would happen as we see here. And so these 3,000 men of Judah are left, you know, in obscurity. They're left away. The Spirit of God, of course, once again, comes mightily upon Samson. And this is important to realize. It doesn't seem like Samson always has the strength. It seems what God allows him to do. So the ropes were changed, easily broken, and the strength was multiplied by this miraculous event of what happened here. Now he finds his jawbone of his donkey. Finds the jawbone of his donkey lying around, And a jawbone is pretty deadly. You know, it's used as a club. You saw the picture in the beginning when we first started the class. And by the time the encounter was over, here goes Samson out through there, and he kills how many men? 1,000. What do you think they have weapons?
Sure.
The Philistines, without a doubt. You know, they're in they brought him back. They're in their area where they're going to get this done and what's going to happen. And I guarantee you, remember, they came to get Samson, came to fight if they needed to, so they didn't come what? Unprepared. They are armed. And the Philistines, we know the way they were, and they would be armed with swords, spears, shields. I mean, these men were ready to go at it with whatever needed to be. More like with daggers also. I mean, they're ready to go to war. And Samson just picks up something that was there that comes from God in the sense, you know, it's from a donkey. Doesn't have any real weapon. I mean, it is a real weapon, but not in the sense that you think there. And Samson becomes victorious. And so here he kills these 1,000 men, but there's another pressing need that's about to arise here, that's about to happen. And verses 18 through 19, we'll read in just a moment. Dad, go
You know
ahead.
what amazes me, these 1,000 men, you're right, they had the shields with it. You would think that jawbone would have broken and shattered after a short period of time smashing against shields and stuff. But there again, we don't know exactly what happened, but we know that he was able to do it with that one jawbone.
That's exactly right. I mean, who was Goliath? What kind of person? Where was he from? Goliath. He's a Philistine. That's why we know how the Philistines fought, because when you look at their war and the way they set up the shield. So I want you to think, you're thinking how many times you'd have to hit a shield, you know, with a jawbone to make somebody drop it. And if you're just going through it all, it's remarkable that not just that he did it, but that's huge that jawbone didn't break. And this one, once again, we see this way of God protecting him through it. I'm out of time, so which is good since I'm out of slides. So I thought maybe I'd make it and be okay. We wouldn't get that far, but so we just got one extra verses into it. But as we look at this and remember this, we'll just I just want us to understand here that God, if we put our trust in Him, God will get us through everything. And this is where the Israelites will start to wake up again and to see this. And then, of course, it's not going to be the case. They're going to basically go back up against Samson, and it's just a whole bad issue all around. So that's where we're at. Any comments or questions before we close the night? Nope? All right, we'll close there. Thank you. Need the bell. I bet everybody's thinking in your head, Ernie, ring the bell, ring the bell. That was so close. That was so close. A little slow. I don't know how to do that. Yes.
All right, if you'd like to mark number 596, that will be the invitation song here shortly. Brother Ronnie Dennis has our dismissal prayer this evening. as far as additional announcements, Lavina had her surgery and it went great. They have had her up a few times, about 4 hours after her surgery, and she's still at the hospital, but they are waiting for space here at Polk to get her in there for the rest of her rehab. So that's a good thing to have her close to home. Eddie Hooper has throat cancer and is about to start treatments. They put a feeding tube in today and fitted him for the cap he has to wear during treatments. So please keep him in your prayers. And Chelsea has asked for prayers for Cody. He's having some difficult time getting some of his medications to where they work properly for him. So please keep him in your prayers. Of course, Kevin, we want to continue to remember him in your prayers as you go through this week. We have the Veterans Box. Tonight's the last to put anything in the Veterans Box, so please remember to do that. And I would imagine that Steele is still needing birthday and anniversary cards, so please remember to get those to her this week if possible. That is all the announcements that I have, except we certainly want to remember that Ernie and Melissa will be traveling this week, will be gone for 2 Sundays, and so we want to hope that they have a good trip. They're going on a cruise, and also I was thinking that maybe we ought to get a walker for Ernie since he's a year older tonight to go aboard ship with. He said, I can't wait till next year when he turns 55, because then he starts getting all the senior discounts. He looks old enough, you ought to get him now.
Yeah, there we go. I'm on that.
I'm only kidding. But yes, today is Ernie's birthday, and we're happy for him and glad that we can be here with him. So I'll let Bill do the honors later for them. Is there anything else that we need to mention? Oh, that's right. Thank you. That was my first thought. Many of you may have heard Brother Robert Taylor over your years or heard his name mentioned. I cannot imitate how he spoke, but it was in a very monotone spirit. But you were enthralled with the way he spoke. Yes, Aaron just went and he would have his hands on the pulpit like this and never wavered. Never had to pick up his Bible. He would have his children, when they were growing up, say, Dad, and give a few words, and his dad would have to give them book, chapter, and verse. Or they would say, book, chapter, and verse, here it is, and he would start quoting it. Never had to pick up a Bible. Sadly, he passed away yesterday. He was in his 90s, a great speaker, a great soldier of the cross. And he certainly will be missed in the brotherhood, but he has left a legacy that is going to be very difficult for anyone to come along and fulfill. And our hearts and prayers go out to the family. Anything else? If not, Brother, would you come and bring us the word 596, Song of Invitation.
Turn me your Bible to 2 Corinthians chapter 12. We'll be there in a moment, 2 Corinthians chapter 12. I'll just say this, so today I was just go along with my lesson out at the farm, working on fence lines, cutting out all the fence lines, taking T-posts up, having a guy out there butchering, basically shredding all the trees in a sense that are out there on the privets and so on. And so I'm on my tractor, move things around. You can imagine when you're doing that, there's things that start hanging everywhere from other trees, and which isn't uncommon here. I've noticed there's a lot of things hanging out of the trees that get a hold of you, kind of rip your head off, and different things you're driving on a tractor. Well, I was driving on my tractor, and all of a sudden I feel this something grab me back here on my back, and probably see a little scar comes all the way around. And it was a thorn. It was a thorn, and it was basically a long. You know, they're everywhere here. I've never seen so many hanging thorns in my life. You know, but I was moving along. Thankfully, I was only in my second year, basically medium gear, and as I did, it actually yanked my head back, and it wouldn't let go. And I hit stop real quick, let go, or I put my foot off the gas, I guess you'd say, going forward, and it just wouldn't let go. I'm trying to get this thing off me, and finally it came off. You know, I got it off. But it's amazing how something so tiny, you know, can do so much damage real quick and stop you in your tracks to where basically you just don't move. And you know, it felt like a needle that long. You know, basically ripping at me. You didn't know what it was at first, and you know, you're thinking what grabbed you, and you're seeing through that. So I want us to think about that for just a moment when we think about thorns in the flesh. And when we think about how thorns in the flesh do bring us to a stop, and they really bother us, you know, it annoys you, and everything with it. You know, Paul talks about the same thing. He talks about not that, but he talks about a figurative thorn in the flesh. It's actually a real thing that was happening to him, but it was a figurative sense the way he stated it. And he says here in chapter 12, verse 7, before he gets to there, he's talking about a dream, a vision of seeing a man, and basically talking about brought it up to the other heaven and showing that, you know, not to exalt himself above others. And the reason this is so important, remember, Paul had basically you would say, you know, every miracle, just like all the other apostles, he was able to do that. But Paul went beyond, a lot beyond what the other apostles. He went into the world where other apostles wouldn't go. And he went in there to bring people to God. And so he talks to God about this thorn that's in his flesh, and he wants it removed. He wants it gone. And before I read that, there's only one other time in the Bible, and I hope I get this right. I'm trying to remember. I think it's, let me look quick before I give it to you. I think it's Numbers 33, 55. Yes, in Numbers 33, 55, the only other time we see this mentioned about somebody else, and it's called actually the thorn in the side. And we find with the Israelites that what it tells us there, in fact, let me just read it to you before we get there. It says in verse 55, "But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then it shall be to those whom you let remain, shall be irritants in your eyes." Very, very interesting there. I'll just explain that in a second. "And thorns in your sides, and they shall harass you in the land where you dwell." Paul had both of those issues also. He had a problem with his eyes, what he stated, and he also, we know the scales fell from him. He was fine with that, but even later it seems like. But so we know this thorn in the flesh is not his eyes, as some will try to teach. The thorn in the flesh that he speaks of, he's talking about the Israelites, that they were coming and messing up everything he was doing for God. Every time he would preach or teach a congregation, establish a church, they would come in behind him and try to tell everybody they're crazy, that Paul's crazy, you don't want to listen to him. And so they became his thorn in the flesh. Well, God is going to remind Paul here that he's just going to have to live with it. In other words, Paul, you're going to have to continue to do your best because the Israelites aren't going to give up. They're going to keep doing this. And it's interesting how God brings about talking about them in a sense as kind of as demons in the way they're living, the way they're doing things. And he says this, notice in verse 7, chapter 12 of 2 Corinthians, "And lest I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of the revelations, a thorn in the flesh was given me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I exalted above measure." So the buffet, you know, we see here, the messenger of Satan, anybody teaching contrary to God, that's basically what he talks about they are. And so that's what we see the Israelites were doing at this time, because they were going against what Jesus. And so he says, "Concerning to this thing, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. And he said to me," this is so important, brethren, these words, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness." Those are words for all of us tonight, all of us today, that God's grace is sufficient for any situation we're in, everything we deal with. And God's telling us that we can do just like Him, that God's strength is to make us even stronger, even during our weakness. And it comes through that grace that we find from Him. And because of that grace, we have the ability to come to God through Christ. The Bible tells us to believe, repent, confess, to be baptized for the remission of our sins. And that's where we see that grace through faith work. And brethren, you and I, no matter how many thorns try to grab us, how many thorns try to tug us down, pull us back, stop us in our tracks, we need to realize it's just this easy. Take it out, right? And then you can go ahead and move on and do what you need to for God and for Christ. And continue in the direction. But I will say this, doesn't mean it won't be painful from time to time. I guarantee you, I'm still feeling that right now. And we see that and understand the same thing happens in our spiritual lives. But God will get us through it, regardless of what it may be. If there's anyone here this evening that would need to respond to the invitation as we've stated, we ask you to do so while together we stand and sing this invitation song.
I heard an old story, how the Savior came from glory, how He gave His life on Calvary to save a wretch like me. I heard about His groaning and His precious blood atoning. Then I repented of my sin and won the victory. Oh, victory in Jesus, my Savior forever. He sought me and bought me with His redeeming blood. He loved me ere I knew Him, and all my love is to Him. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing flood. I heard about His healing, of His cleansing power revealing, how He made the lame to walk again, and caused the blind to see. And then I cried, dear Jesus, come and heal my broken spirit. And then obeyed His blessed command and gained the victory. Oh, victory in Jesus, my Savior forever. He sought me and bought me with His redeeming blood. He loved me ere I knew Him, and all my love is to Him. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing flood. Good to have everybody here tonight. We certainly appreciate your attendance. Is there anything that we failed to mention that we need to bring up? If not, I'll ask Brother Ronnie to dismiss us in prayer.
Shall we bow? Our Heavenly Father, we come before Thee this time, bow before Thee, thanking Thee for all the blessings of life Thou hast bestowed upon us thus far. We're thankful for our lives and our health. We're thankful for this day we've had, for this opportunity we've had to assemble together and study another portion from Thy Word. We pray, Father, that the things we have studied here tonight will be most helpful to us. Build us up, make us stronger in the faith, that we might be more knowledgeable of what Thou would have us to do and to be shining examples unto others. We have so much in this life to be thankful for, Father, and we know that Thou will always answer our prayers. We may not always get the answers that we seek, but they will not go left unattended. We ask Thee, Father, to forgive us of our sins, anything that is amiss within our lives. For we know we are are subject to make errors and mistakes. And we're thankful that we have this pathway, this avenue called prayer. When those times arise within our lives, that we may come to thee. We ask thee, Father, to be with those who were mentioned here tonight, those who were sick. We pray that the things being done to restore their health will be in accordance with thy will, and that they might be able to take up their places once again. At this time, Father, I ask that thou would be with Mom. If it be thy will, that thou might ease her pain and suffering. I ask thee, Father, to watch over me as I stand beside her. Father, when the time is near, when Brother Ernie and Sister Melissa do begin to travel, we ask that thou would go with them throughout their journey, that it would be safe, that thou would bring them back home safely to us once again. We're thankful, Father, for the gift of thy Son, who had so much love for us, that he was willing to go and shed his blood upon the cross, that through that blood we would have the hope of life eternal. We're thankful for the Holy Word, which reveals unto us the one and only everlasting true way to life everlasting. We're thankful, Father, for all those throughout this country and throughout the world who proclaim the gospel. We pray that much good might be accomplished through their efforts. We ask thee, Father, to continue with us throughout this night. Go with us as we depart from this place. Watch over, care for us. Bring us back on this next Lord's Day, when we may worship thee in spirit and in truth once again. And we ask, Father, that when the judgment day comes, and we stand before thee, if we have done all that thou hast commanded us to do, may we hear thee say, well done, thou good and faithful servant, enter ye in. All these things we ask in the name of thy Son and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Would everyone join me in wishing Ernie a happy birthday and sing happy? I sent him a text earlier. I really thought he was 47, but he's not.